7:36 right now, and a suspect wanted in connection with a double homicide has been found dead. This case all started last Wednesday when two victims were found shot to death outside of their townhome along the 7900 block of Tam O'Shanter Boulevard in North Lauderdale. Those victims seen here identified as Jennifer Bellany and her daughter, nicknamed Nana. Police say the daughter's father, Andre Anglin, was the only suspect in the shooting. BSO now saying Anglin shot himself inside of a bathroom.
She finally walked away from the pain, from the threats, from a man who once held her heart and later shattered it. She rebuilt her world piece by piece. New home, new hope, and a fierce devotion to her children. And even after everything he'd done, she still tried to help him, gave him shelter, connected him with a pastor, loaned him money. But none of it was enough. On an ordinary Wednesday morning, as the sun rose over North Lauderdale, Jennifer Alexandra Bellony prepared to take her children to school. Her daughter Anastasia, just 15 years old, full of life and promise, sat beside her. Her two younger sons were already in the car. What happened next would silence a mother's voice forever and cut short the life of a bright, spirited teenage girl. The man responsible was a stranger. He didn't break in. He didn't wear a mask. He stood outside her home waiting. And when she saw him, she said just 5 words to her mother on the phone. "I'll talk to you later." What could have been done to stop what followed? And why did she still try to save him, even after she feared for her own life? Let us know in the comments, what would you have done? Now this is the story of Jennifer and Anastasia Bellony. Jennifer Alexandra Bellony was a woman shaped by resilience. Born into a Haitian-American family, she carried with her the strength and traditions of her heritage. From a young age, Jennifer understood the importance of family, sacrifice, and building a life rooted in love. She became a mother at a young age, and with each child, her devotion deepened. Jennifer wasn't just a mother in name. She was a warrior for her children, a protector, a provider, someone who would go to great lengths to ensure they had a future. She worked tirelessly, both to give her children the life she always dreamed of for them and to heal from the struggles she faced in her own personal life. Her marriage to Andre O'Dane Anglin, whom she met in high school, was a complex one. Their love story began like many, two young hearts full of dreams, bound by the promise of a shared future. But as time went on, that promise began to break. The man she once loved became someone she feared. Jennifer found herself in a constant cycle of separation and reconciliation, trying desperately to make it work for the sake of their 3 children. Her story was one of determination, of a woman who refused to let her past define her and who fought every day to give her children the best life she could. But no matter how far she went, Andre remained an unwelcome shadow in her life. And for Jennifer, it would be that shadow that would ultimately seal her fate. Then there was Anastasia. Anastasia Bellony, just 15 years old, was already showing the world who she was meant to be. She was intelligent, full of life, and had dreams that stretched far beyond the limits of her small town. Anastasia was the type of person who lit up any room she walked into. She had a smile that could brighten even the darkest of days, and a heart full of kindness that extended not just to her family, but to everyone around her. She shared an unbreakable bond with her mother. Jennifer wasn't just her mom. She was her best friend, her role model, and the person who protected her from the harsh realities of life. Anastasia looked up to her mother, admired her strength, and felt a sense of duty to protect her younger brothers too. Anastasia's relationship with her siblings was one of deep care and responsibility. She was their big sister, their protector, someone who made sure they felt loved and safe. But beyond her family, Anastasia was also a young girl with dreams of her own. She excelled in school and had an infectious passion for life. Teachers remembered her as someone who was eager to learn and always ready to lend a helping hand. She had friends who loved her and admired her, not just for her intelligence, but for the warmth she shared with everyone around her. She was a teenager with the world at her feet. Her future was bright, and she had plans to go far in life. But that future was tragically stolen from her in the blink of an eye. As we reflect on who Jennifer and Anastasia were, 2 women full of love, strength, and promise, it's impossible not to wonder, how did it all go wrong? What happened in the moments before their lives were violently taken away? What could have been done to protect them from the unimaginable? What qualities do you think make someone a strong parent? How would you define family strength? Let us know in the comments. Jennifer first met Andre O'Dane Anglin when they were both in high school, young and full of dreams. What started as a sweet romance soon blossomed into something more serious. They married, and over time, they had 3 children together. At first, it seemed like the perfect life. 2 young parents raising a family. But the picture-perfect beginning didn't last. As the years went on, the cracks in their relationship began to show. Behind closed doors, things weren't as they appeared. Jennifer's once loving husband slowly began to reveal a darker side. Emotional manipulation became a regular part of their life. Andre's behavior grew more erratic, and the love they once shared seemed to fade. Jennifer found herself trapped in a cycle of abuse, both emotional and physical. The man who had once promised to love her for life was now the source of her pain. Still, Jennifer tried to make it work, convinced that things could get better. But with each passing year, the incidents of violence and control escalated. It wasn't long before the first police reports started to appear. Jennifer, despite her fears, began to reach out for help. There were restraining orders filed, calls to the authorities, but every time she tried to break free, Andre would find a way back into her life, sometimes through apologies, sometimes through threats. It became clear to her family that the man she once loved had become someone unrecognizable, and the abuse was no longer something they could ignore. With every attempt to rebuild, Jennifer realized she was fighting a battle she couldn't win alone. And yet, she continued to care for him, hoping that one day he would change. But deep down, she knew the reality. It was a battle that would end in tragedy. In 2020, Jennifer reached her breaking point. After years of abuse, emotional turmoil, and broken promises, she made the heartbreaking decision to divorce Andre. It wasn't easy. Her heart still held a shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could improve. But the cycle of pain had gone on long enough, and Jennifer knew she had to break free, for herself and for her children. The decision to divorce marked the beginning of a painful yet transformative chapter in Jennifer's life. She poured everything she had into rebuilding. She found strength she didn't know she had. She purchased a home, a safe haven where she could begin to heal. It wasn't just a house. It was a fresh start. She started a new life with her children, balancing work, motherhood, and the emotional weight of everything she had endured. Jennifer's transformation was remarkable. She had fought to regain her independence and to provide her children with the stability they desperately needed. But even as she tried to move forward, Andre's presence lingered like a shadow. Despite the divorce, he continued to intrude into her life. He texted, called, and showed up uninvited, always asking for another chance, always pressuring her to reconcile. Jennifer said no each time, but his persistence never ceased. And still, Jennifer didn't turn him away completely. She helped him, financially, emotionally, and even through connections to people who might offer him a new beginning. It wasn't about love anymore. It was about compassion and perhaps a lingering desire to maintain peace. But with each gesture of kindness, Andre's grip on her seemed to tighten. Despite her boundaries, Jennifer remained trapped in a cycle she couldn't break. Have you or someone you know experienced a partner who wouldn't let go, even after separation? How did you handle it? Jennifer's fight for safety began long before the tragic events of April 2022. In 2018, after yet another violent episode, she took the brave step of filing for a temporary restraining order against Andre. She documented the threats, the escalating violence, and the fear she lived with every day. It wasn't the first time he'd hurt her. His abuse had begun as early as 2009, and it had only grown more intense with time. The pattern was clear. Andre's violence wasn't a momentary lapse. It was a dangerous, consistent part of their relationship. Yet, despite these clear warning signs, the system failed Jennifer. She filed the necessary paperwork and the court issued the order. But in the end, it wasn't enforced. Jennifer chose not to continue with the restraining order process. The reasons are complex, but it often happens that victims feel trapped, caught in the tension between wanting protection and fearing retaliation. For Jennifer, there was the added complication of still trying to maintain some level of peace for the sake of her children. She thought that perhaps she could still help Andre, or at least avoid making things worse. But this indecision, combined with a lack of proper legal support, meant the order was never truly acted upon, despite the documented history of abuse. Despite her many efforts to protect herself, Jennifer was left vulnerable. Andre's threats had been documented, but they weren't enough to force lasting change. This is a harsh reality many victims of domestic violence face. The law can only do so much if those who are supposed to enforce it don't act swiftly or decisively. The warning signs were there, the bruises, the threats, the broken promises. But the system failed to recognize the urgency. Do you think restraining orders actually protect victims? Or is the system too flawed to offer real safety? April 13th, 2022, began like any other day for Jennifer Belloni. The morning was quiet as she prepared for the school run, juggling the responsibilities of being a mother of three. Her routine was familiar, getting her children ready for the day, making sure everything was in order before they left the house. But in those final moments, Jennifer had no idea that this would be the day her life would end. As she made the final preparations, Jennifer spoke to her mother on the phone. It was an ordinary call, just a quick chat before she left to drop her daughter Anastasia and one of her younger sons off at school. The conversation seemed typical, mundane, until Jennifer's voice grew suddenly tense. "I'll talk to you later," she said, abruptly cutting the call short. Something had changed, something in the air, something she had sensed before she even saw him. Andre Anglin, her ex-husband, had appeared outside her townhouse at Willow Woods. He had been there before, uninvited, often trying to rekindle what was long gone. But this time, something was different. Jennifer, cautious yet resolute in her decision to move forward without him, could have turned him away as she had so many times before. Instead, she was caught off guard by his sudden presence at her doorstep. The tension escalated quickly. Before she could react, Andre stepped forward. The confrontation happened in an instant. In an unpredictable burst of violence, he pulled out a gun and shot Jennifer. The loud bang of the gunshot shattered the early morning calm. Anastasia, who had been standing nearby, screamed in terror. The piercing sound of her cry cut through the chaos. But it was brief. Andre, without hesitation, turned the gun on her. In a matter of seconds, both Jennifer and Anastasia lay lifeless on the ground. What followed was an eerie silence. The world outside continued as if nothing had happened. But for Jennifer's young sons still in the car, their lives had been irrevocably altered. They were the ones to witness the horror, left in the terrifying aftermath of their mother and sister's brutal deaths. In the chaos that ensued, Andre fled the scene, leaving behind a town that would never forget the violence that took place that morning. Inside the car, Jennifer's two young sons sat, completely unaware of the violence that was unfolding just a few feet away. They were too young to fully comprehend what was happening, but old enough to sense the tension in the air. Their world, once filled with the comfort of their mother's presence, would never be the same again. When the shots rang out, the boys were still in their seats, waiting for their mother to finish her conversation. They didn't understand what had just occurred, why their mother's voice had cut off so suddenly, or why they could hear their sisters scream from inside the car. But as they watched their mother and sister fall to the ground, the horror they witnessed would forever be etched into their minds. The psychological aftermath of that moment is something no child should have to endure. The trauma of seeing their mother and sister shot in cold blood left scars far deeper than any physical injury could. They were children, too young to fully process the horror they had just witnessed, but old enough to remember every detail, every horrifying moment. The psychological toll this experience would take on them cannot be overstated. Children who should have been safe, surrounded by love, were now left with a darkness they couldn't escape. They would carry the weight of that day with them for the rest of their lives, haunted by the trauma, the unanswered questions, and the absence of the two people who had once been their world. Within minutes of the shooting, law enforcement responded swiftly. The Broward Sheriff's Office initiated a full-scale manhunt, locking down the neighborhood as the search for Andre Anglin began. The news spread quickly, and soon the entire community was on edge, not knowing where the shooter might be hiding. A press release from the sheriff's office confirmed the brutal killings and warned the public to stay vigilant. As the news broke, national headlines quickly picked up the story, amplifying the horror of the crime. The details of Jennifer and Anastasia's tragic deaths shocked the public, as many struggled to understand how someone could commit such a senseless act of violence. Neighbors and family members, still reeling from the shock, expressed their disbelief. "He was always a little off, but I never expected this," said one neighbor, still shaken by the memory. Another family member described Jennifer as a loving mother who only wanted to protect her children from harm. But it was too late. Authorities made it clear that the hunt for Anglin was a priority, and they would stop at nothing to bring him to justice. Andre Anglin's history is one marked by patterns of instability and violence. He was not just a man who would eventually take the lives of Jennifer and Anastasia. He was a man whose actions had been influenced by a troubled past. Born into a family where emotional turbulence seemed to run deep, Andre's psychological profile paints a picture of someone who had struggled with mental and emotional issues for much of his life. His criminal record tells a chilling story. As early as 2009, he was linked to abuse allegations that would later become a significant part of his pattern. In 2011, another incident of violence surfaced, further highlighting the dangerous tendencies that would only escalate. Despite these troubling red flags, there's always a sense of hope in those around him, an expectation that he might change or that reconciliation could heal the wounds. But each time Jennifer gave him another chance, Andre's manipulative behavior resurfaced, wearing her down with emotional control and false promises of change. Jennifer had tried to help him, offering financial support, seeking intervention from religious figures, but nothing ever seemed to break the cycle. Andre's manipulative tactics kept her tethered to him, even after their divorce, using emotional abuse to maintain control over her life, her decisions, and her well-being. Days after the killings, Andre Anglin was tracked down to a Circle K in Fort Lauderdale. Law enforcement surrounded the gas station, and the situation quickly escalated into a standoff. Anglin retreated into a restroom, but as deputies closed in, a single gunshot echoed from inside. He had taken his own life. The Broward County Medical Examiner confirmed his death by suicide, bringing an end to the manhunt. The community, still in shock from the tragic loss of Jennifer and Anastasia, was left to process the brutal reality of what had transpired. While some found closure in his death, others couldn't shake the question. Could anything have been done to prevent this tragedy? With Anglin's death by suicide, there would be no trial, no opportunity for a court to hold him accountable for his actions. This left many grappling with a frustrating sense of unfinished business. The justice that Jennifer and Anastasia deserved would never come through a legal process, leaving the family to bear the weight of their grief in silence. For those who have experienced domestic violence, this outcome raises painful questions about justice. Can true justice ever be achieved in cases like this, when the perpetrator takes the easy way out? And for the victims, is there ever real closure when the person who caused so much pain is no longer around to answer for their actions? The tragedy remains a reminder of the gaps in legal protection for those trapped in abusive relationships. Jennifer and Anastasia's story is one of unthinkable loss, but it's also a legacy of courage, love, and the fight for a better future. Their memory reminds us of the silent battles many face in abusive relationships and the importance of standing up for those who cannot. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like, share, and comment below. Your voice can help spread awareness about domestic violence and support those who need it most. Don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories that must not be forgotten.